For the third time in the past week, Ryne Stanek blew a late lead for the New York Mets. Is there a growing problem the Mets have to address at the back end of their bullpen? I'll talk about that and more on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Now, going into the game on Wednesday, I would not have been surprised at all if the Mets were going to lose that one, just because you were going up against Corbin Burnes, who hasn't gotten off to the best start this year, but he is still Corbin Burnes, one of the best starting pitchers in baseball, and you were trying to match him with Huascar Braziban and Brandon Waddell. And so that pitching disadvantage is not one the Mets should have won, and yet they did. Huascar Braziban and Brandon Waddell outpitched Corbin Burnes. Braziban, 2 scoreless innings as the opener, struck out 3, walked 1, did not allow a hit. Brandon Waddell, who hasn't pitched in the big league since 2021, spent the last couple of years pitching overseas, primarily in the KBO, had a great start to the season in Syracuse when AAA for the Mets comes up, and he was unbelievable. Just a pitchability lefty. Stuff is not amazing. It's not like he's lighting up the radar gun. He's sitting in the low 90s to high 80s, just throwing sliders and sweepers and just, locating his fastball really well. Just somehow finding a way through 4 1/3 innings pitch. He got 13 outs for the Mets on 60 pitches. That is incredible to get a spot starter to come up and give you that much bulk relief in the middle of the game, to the point where Corbin Burnes was out of the game through 6 innings and Waddell was pitching in the 7th, getting one out on a left-on-left matchup. He allowed 3 hits, no walks, 4 strikeouts, no runs. You were pitching a shutout with Huascar Braziban and Brandon Waddell. Now, the Mets only scored 1 run on Corbin Burnes, and Burnes was good. The 1 run came on a Mark Vientos solo homer. Like most aces, if you're going to get to them, you have to get to them early, and they had Burnes on the ropes in the first inning where they loaded the bases with 1 out, so a real opportunity to score there. And unfortunately, in that first inning, you had Starling Marte strike out. I don't know why he was in there over Jesse Winker. Unless Winker was sick and he wasn't available for a full game, I might have missed where Mendoza explained that decision, but Winker should have been in there against the righty. And then, so Marte strikes out, and then Jeff McNeil grounds out to strand those 2 runners. After that, the Mets really didn't threaten against Corbin Burnes again, outside of the solo homer by Vientos. But you have a 1-0 lead in the top of the 7th inning, and the Mets had their opportunities to score against the Diamondbacks bullpen. But first and foremost, it was Ryne Stanek that blew another game. He comes in with 1 out in the 7th because Josh Naylor led off the inning. So Carlos Mendoza stuck with Waddell to get the lefty out. Then he goes to his righty for a couple of righties in the lineup. And Stanek does get the first out, a ground out. Then he gives a base hit up the middle. Then he bloop double. And then Geraldo Perdomo comes off the bench, gets a pinch hit single that scores 2 runs. And that ended up being, mostly the difference in the game. Chris Davinsky gave up 2 runs later on, but that's where you lost the lead. And then you go to Davinsky instead of a rested Reed Garrett and an Edwin Diaz in a 1-run game, which you could quibble with that decision. I think that at this stage with no off days, Carlos Mendoza is just really trying to protect those guys and only put them in there in situations where they have a lead, because you want to make sure you win the games that you got that advantage in. And if Stanek had got the job done and it was 1-0 going into the 8th inning, I'm sure the Mets would have pitched Reed Garrett and then Edwin Diaz. But instead, you're losing. So he has Davinsky, and Davinsky, who knows how long he's even going to be on this roster. We'll talk about that more in the next segment. So you're trying to just get by and steal outs. And I'm not going to really complain too much about Mendoza's decision-making at the end of the game as far as who he pitched. Yeah, if you want to say that if the Mets had thrown Edwin Diaz out there for, the top of the 9th, they would have won it potentially in the bottom half. But to me, that's not what frustrated me about Carlos Mendoza. It was saying after the game that Ryne Stanek just got unlucky, and really it was Stanek's comments that really rubbed me the wrong way, because he talked about how basically the expected batting average was on his side, is what he was saying, right? That balls weren't hit very hard, and that's the only reason. That it's just been a series of unfortunate events for Ryne Stanek. There's nothing wrong. The stuff's good. Well, here's the thing. If you want to go straight on expected batting average, the expected batting average on the double that was a bloop double, and that is one that I could, in some respects, give him the benefit of the doubt that was kind of a fluky hit. I think because of where it was placed, the expected batting average on that was like 900. So when a bloop is hit there, it's going to be a hit. But I get what he's saying. The ball's not hit hard. Here's my problem with his logic, or the defense of Ryne Stanek is, it's just being unlucky. That's all. Lourdes Gurriel Jr. got a base hit. And yes, it was not a well-hit ball. It was a ground ball up the middle. But what was the location of that pitch? Middle. Right down the pipe. Is that hitting your spot? I don't think so. I don't think the scouting report says throw a fastball right down the pipe. I don't think that's ever the scouting report. So sure, it wasn't hit well, but the location wasn't right. It's not like you executed. The bloop double, I can give him that one because it was a fastball up in there and it wasn't a bad spot for that pitch. The guy just, got sawed off and it worked out for him. Fine. But then you have the RBI hit to Geraldo Perdomo, and both Mendoza and Stanek talked about, a bloop liner, right? Well, how about location? Because for one, you're up in the count. You're up 1-2 in the count. Do you have a pitch other than the fastball that you can get a swing and miss on? Because if you don't, that's a problem. Is his splitter not in the right form right now where he can't bury one in the dirt and try to get a swing and miss because that's what he needed to do in that spot? Or if not, you throw a fastball up in the zone and try to get a swing and miss. And where was Francisco Alvarez locating? Like where was he setting up? He flashes up in the zone, flashes a target up in the zone for Ryne Stanek. Now, could that have been a decoy to the hitter? Maybe. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. But I think that fastball is supposed to be up in the zone. And why do I think that? Because if you are going on the scouting report, Geraldo Perdomo, I looked this up, the fastball ends up low and away in the strike zone. That quadrant of the strike zone throughout this season, it's early, but Geraldo Perdomo is hitting 625 on pitches low and away in the strike zone. And that's where the pitch was. Yes, it was a soft hit liner, but it's a 2-strike approach. I don't think that he is trying to hit a 3-run homer there with 2 runners in scoring position. No, he's trying to find some real estate. It's a good piece of hitting, and it's on Ryne Stanek for missing his spot, because if that fastball is up in the zone, he either gets a foul ball or he gets a swing and miss. Because I don't think Perdomo's going up there and getting enough of the baseball to get a base hit. So no, I'm not going to just say, it's just bad luck. Now, I will say you want your relievers to have short memory, and I do give Stanek credit for being a veteran who is not going to get down on himself, and he shouldn't, because he needs to have confidence. And eventually, I do think it'll come around for Ryne Stanek. I think he's one of these relievers that's either really hot or really cold, because he either gets to that point where he has the pinpoint command of his fastball up in the zone, where he is able to get the swing and miss, and he's going well, or he has the times where that fastball command eludes him, he's pulling it a little bit down in the zone, and then he can get dinged and dunked and get hit a little bit. So I think in the long run, he's going to be fine. But when he's not, and he's going through one of these stretches, it shows you the lack of other options the Mets have. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in the next segment. But I have to still also rail against the Mets offense, because they still had an opportunity to win this game. Bottom of the 7th inning, Tyrone Taylor gets a leadoff single, steals second base. He's in scoring position. Mets strand him. After Chris Stefanski gives up the runs in the 9th inning, so the Mets are trailing 4-1. Tyrone Taylor, who had a great game, comes up, gets his first home run of the season to lead off the 9th. Now it's 4-2. Then the Mets load the bases with nobody out. Lindor and Soto each walk. Pete Alonso gets hit by a pitch. So you got bases loaded. You're trailing by 2. Nobody out. Mark Vientos hits a sac fly. And when Jesse Winker fouls the ball off his foot and they rule it fair, the Mets would have tied the game right there if Vientos had just put the ball in the air and got a sac fly. But he struck out on a pitch below the zone. Now, there was some good pitching in that at bat before, the final pitch, and it still was good pitching that he got, Vientos to chase on a sinker. And he dotted some pitches on the block. You got to give the pitcher credit. It was a tough at bat for Vientos. He didn't get anything to hit. And he was trying to get into a hitter's count, and the guy just located. But he still chased. If he doesn't chase that pitch, it's a 2-2 count. Maybe he gets something to hit. But hey, that's how baseball goes sometimes. You're not going to come through every time. Vientos did put a run on the board with the solo homer. So you pass the baton, and then Jesse Winker comes up, and it's unfortunate that the umpiring has been so horrible lately, and the Mets get screwed over a little bit as Jesse Winker fouls one off of his foot, and it's ruled in play, fair ball, not a foul at all. And so ends up being a ground out that results in one run coming in, but puts you one out closer to the game ending. Who knows if Jesse Winker gets back in the box, what would have happened? Maybe he gets a base hit and the Mets tie the game. Maybe he strikes out. You really never know. Then Francisco Alvarez comes up, grounds out to end the threat. But overall, the Mets were 0 for 10 with runners in scoring position in this game. They stranded 13 runners throughout the game. It's going to be hard to win that way. You give the offense a little bit of a pass coming off 2 monster games, but they're still not clicking the way you completely want them to. I'm far more concerned, though, about this bullpen, which, again, has been great all season, but now with AJ Minter out, Danny Young now on the IL, we're going to talk about those things in the next segment. This bullpen is looking a lot weaker. The good news, they are in good shape for the final game of this series. I'm not going to preview that on today's show. It's Kodai Senga versus Zach Gallen. Gallen has not been great this year, so that's your little preview. Senga has been, and the Mets have a very rested Reed Garrett and Edwin Diaz to close out a tight game. So ideally, Senga will carry you most of the way. If the Mets lineup explodes, hey, maybe you can still stay away from Garrett and Diaz, but you had the guys rested that you need to hopefully close out this series. And I feel good about them winning this one. But moving forward, when you maybe have Reed Garrett having worked 2 times in a row and he's not available, who else do the Mets have right now outside of Reed Garrett that can set up Edwin Diaz? I want to go through the now questions in this bullpen a little bit in the next segment. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices, no console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed. As easily as you stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. You'll play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. If you already have a console, the Fire TV Stick device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take your games wherever you plug in. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices including Fire TV Stick 4K, 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 14,000 subscribers. The Mets got some more bad news for their bullpen on Wednesday as Danny Young hit the IL with an elbow strain. Right now, that's all they're saying, elbow strain, but they also were asked or Carlos Mendoza was asked if Tommy John is on the table, and he said it was. So not a good sign for Danny Young, who could be out for a very long time. And if he is, the Mets are basically without a left-hander in their bullpen until Brooks Raley comes aboard. And today, to accommodate Chris Devenski getting added to the roster, the Mets moved Brooks Raley to the 60-day IL. So that kind of sets a timeline for Raley to return. That means they are not expecting him for the next 2 months. So don't expect to see Brooks Raley until July. So Raley's not coming in on a white horse just yet. So what do the Mets do with this bullpen? Now, in the short term, Devenski threw 38 pitches. He probably gets DFA'd. And you bring somebody else up. Tyler Zuber and Anthony Gasse both pitched in Syracuse on Wednesday. So I imagine those guys are off the table. If you want a lefty, Genesis Cabrera did not pitch. He has a lot of experience in the big leagues last year. He was in a big league bullpen all year with the Blue Jays and pitched to a 3.6 something ERA. I think it was 3.68, but definitely sub 4. So maybe you look at Genesis Cabrera. but he hasn't been off to a great start so far in AAA. 7.88 ERA and 8 innings pitched. He does have 12 strikeouts, though. So we'll see if that's the lefty they grab. They could bring Austin Warren on board to replace Devenski if they want to. He's on the 40-man roster. He has a 4.35 ERA and 10 1/3 innings pitched in Syracuse. 9 walks. That's a lot. Bud does have 14 strikeouts. He's an option. And then there's still the Dedniel Nunez conversation. But when you're just specifically looking at the left-handed reliever options for the Mets, it is really Gassé and Cabrera, and Gassé has been better than Cabrera has, but neither, to me, is the most intriguing of options. I don't think the Mets have a really great option. I was even looking today at Felipe de la Cruz in Double-A. I was just thinking, well, he does have 20 strikeouts in 13 2/3 innings, but he's more of a starting pitcher. And do the Mets really want to halt his development to put him in a big league bullpen right now and add him to the 40-man roster? I don't know if that's necessarily something they're going to want to do. I'd actually have to look. I think if they have to protect him on the 40, then maybe, but I'm not even sure how many years he's been in the Mets organization. Since 2021. So no, he didn't have to be protected anytime soon. So yeah, I don't think that's going to be a viable option for the Mets. I don't think they're going to go there. So if you look at the left-handed options, yeah, I bet you they probably try Gassé or Cabrera coming up soon here. But the Mets might just roll without a lefty until Brooks Raley comes. I really don't know exactly which direction they could go. The one option is the guy we just watched pitch today. Maybe it's Brandon Waddell. Maybe he stays in the bullpen as a long man / lefty option. You're shortening him up, and he's a guy that is definitely decent starter depth for you. But the Mets do have more coming when you look at their rotation with Paul Blackburn, probably not available for the next couple weeks, but he's at least inching closer to return. Frankie Montas could be available early June if everything breaks right, maybe mid-June. Sean Manaea, kind of same timeline, maybe a little bit later than Montas, but you have other starting pitchers for depth, not to mention you have a lot of starting pitching prospects between Brandon Sproat, but a pretty decent start tonight. I might be talking about a lot of prospects tomorrow, so I'll save that for tomorrow's show. You have Blade Tidwell as another option, so we'll see when it comes to Waddell if he might be a guy that sticks around. I think in the short term, it might make sense to keep Waddell on the roster because he just pitched very well against this Diamondbacks team. And you're going to need a spot starter before Kodai Senga pitches again. He's going to start on Thursday today, but before he makes his next start, you'll need another spot starter. So you could keep Waddell, have him pitch one of those games against the Diamondbacks in Arizona, and then you send him down. All of that is to say, the Mets are in a situation right now where they are out of or they don't have any current left-handers in their bullpen, and they're running out of options there. But even more importantly, when it comes to high leverage, it's not like Danny Young was helping you in that department, but you don't have AJ Minter, and you probably won't for the rest of the season. And Ryne Stanek hasn't looked good. So what is the answer? And the answer, I feel, has to be Dedniel Nunez. Now, the Mets were not bringing Nunez into the fold right away because of the need for that spot starter. They didn't want to be in a situation where they call Nunez up to replace Waddell. And then when they need to bring Hagenman back next week to make that spot start, Nunez would have to go down, and then you couldn't bring him back up for 15 days. So they want to make sure when they bring him up, they can keep him up. That's great. Well, look at your bullpen right now. You have Edwin Diaz, Reed Garrett, Ryne Stanek, Huáscar Brazoban, Max Kranick, and Jose Butto. That's 6. You got 2 spots to play with. So why not keep Waddell on the roster for all I care, bring up Nunez today, and roll with that. And then when Waddell pitches and makes that spot start or the bulk appearance out of the bullpen with Brazoban or somebody opening for him, you send him down, and then that can be the spot that you cycle for the next week. Can you get by for the rest of this week and the beginning of next series without 8 guys in the bullpen where you have to cycle that spot where you can keep Waddell and you can bring up Nunez? That's the question. And if not, then send Waddell down, find out somebody else that can come up and make that spot start, whether that is Hagenman, probably not Sproat because he just pitched. We'll see. I mean, regardless, get there when you get there. Right now, the back end of this bullpen, I feel like they need Dedniel Nunez. And I know Nunez hasn't pitched great in Syracuse, but I've talked about this over the last couple of days. To me, you won't know what you have in Dedniel Nunez till you bring him up and you get him in the adrenaline situations of pitching in the big leagues again. And I think the best version of Nunez will shine through. And if it doesn't, no harm, no foul. Send him back to Syracuse and get him right and, try somebody else. But Nunez gives you the highest possible ceiling of anybody you can bring up. And right now, the Mets need a high ceiling, high leverage reliever at the back end of their bullpen. And he's the one guy. So to me, after all these options start to dwindle, if he's really a healthy relief pitcher right now, and they say he is, I wouldn't wait around anymore. I would bring up Dedniel Nunez, or I would get aggressive, spend some money, and go bring in a really high-end reliever that could be your eighth inning guy all season, a guy we're all pretty familiar with. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it right there on the screen who I'm talking about, but I will get into it next. Should the Mets make a big signing right now? We'll go through it in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you a full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money, you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track your shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure to become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks in the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Should the New York Mets pony up and sign David Robertson? Now, I don't even know if David Robertson wants to pitch anymore because he's been out in the free agent market for a very long time. The rumor mill suggested that he wanted $10 million in free agency to match what the Mets paid him 2 years ago, and then the Rangers paid him $11.5 million last year. So he felt, based off of a really good season, he deserved that market price again, and nobody met it. So he's still a free agent. But this is one of the best, most reliable late-inning relievers in Major League Baseball. Last year, he pitched to an ERA of exactly 3 in 72 innings, struck out 99. So that shows you he still has really good stuff. He is used to pitching in New York. He was amazing for the Mets a couple years ago. I've wanted to see David Robertson as Edwin Diaz's setup man for 3 years now. And I've asked for the Mets to bring him back in each offseason since they traded him to the Marlins. Great trade, because why not in that lost season? But man, wouldn't it be great to bring back David Robertson to just solidify the back end of that bullpen? If you had David Robertson, all of a sudden you got Edwin Diaz, David Robertson, Ryne Stanek. It's as if AJ Minter never left, because that is how consistent Robertson has been. These are two guys that are just, they're like a safety blanket in your bullpen. They're just guys that are going to pound the strike zone, get outs, and just not be as volatile as your typical relievers. And I don't know, the guy's 40 years old, and who knows how much he's been pitching to stay in shape. He might have already come to terms with the fact that he's not going to pitch this year. He might be on the verge of retirement, or he could just be waiting by the phone, ready for a team to call. And I get that a $10 million signing at this stage with the Mets as far into the luxury tax as they are is a lot. But I also think the Mets have to recognize the opportunity that's in front of them. And I was talking to one of our Locked On Mets insiders in the text stream today, and we were going back and forth a little bit about how David Stearns has managed the bullpen. And I think he's done a lot better than people give him credit for. If you think about the turnover of this bullpen, go back to the 2022 season. How many of the 2022 Mets, actually, we'll go to 2023. How many of the relievers from the 2023 Mets are still on this team? I'm going to go through this baseball reference page right now. My guess is the only one who's still with this team is the guys that are hurt, which is Brooks Raley and Drew Smith. Raley obviously just signed and could come back in July potentially. Now that he's on the 60-day IL, Drew Smith, if he does come back, it'd be at the absolute end of the season as he's recovering from his Tommy John surgery, which happened almost 2 months after Raley's did. So that kind of gives you an idea of the timelines. But yeah, looking through the names from 2023 Mets, Jose Butto was a starter that year, so technically he stuck around. Grant Hartwig's still in the system, but on a minor league deal now. Dominic Leone, Trevor Gott, Steven Nogasek, Phil Bickford, Tommy Hunter. God, that team was bad. Denny Reyes, John Curtis. You have Reed Garrett, who pitched 17 innings at the end of the season. He stuck around. Jimmy Yacobonis, Dennis Santana, Josh Walker, Sean Reed Foley in the system, but not on a major league deal anymore. Sam Coonrod, Zach Muckenhern, Adam Kolarek, Vinny Nitoli, I don't even remember. Anthony Kay, I forgot he made an appearance. Edwin Uceda, Tyson Miller, Danny Mendick, oh, that's funny. Position player getting a couple innings. TJ McFarland, who's turned around his career a little bit, and Louis Guillorme. So yeah, they're outside of Reed Garrett and Jose Butto. You don't have a single relief pitcher from that team that has been part of this bullpen for the last couple of years. That's only 2 years ago. You have a lot of teams that have young arms that are in their bullpen for 4, 5, 6 years. Mets don't have that. So the turnover has been immense. To take Edwin Diaz as your only constant the last couple of years and cycle through a ton of arms and get to the point where now you have a Garrett established. That's not credit to Stearns. That was a Billy Epler move. But still, you have a Garrett that's in place. Budo's now a reliever for you. To trade for Huascar Brazaban last year and have him, now be blossoming. Max Kranick, a pickup last year that's turned into something. I think David Stearns has done a good job identifying some talent. And I think when you have a team that has to fight tooth and nail to just make the playoffs, you have to be a little bit hesitant to go all in at the deadline. And I look back at what David Stearns did last year. The Brazaban pickup didn't work out, but now you're seeing the vision that he had. The Paul Blackburn pickup did not work out last year because he got hurt, but before he did, he had a couple really nice starts. Tyler Zuber was an arm that's still in your system as an optional reliever, not a bad flyer to take on a guy that didn't cost much. Ryne Stanek did not cost you too much, and he made a big impact in the playoffs. Phil Maton was incredible for the Mets in the regular season. Sure, they didn't push the chips all the way forward to get Tanner Scott, but they didn't gut their farm system. And then who knows, maybe you'll get swept in that doubleheader and you would have fallen a day short, and all the prospects you sent out would have been worth nothing in a lost season at that point. So I think last year he played the situation right. Now this year at the deadline, if the New York Mets are 7 games up in the division, or even if not, if the Phillies or somebody keeps close, but they are well up in the wild card and they have a narrow lead in the division, it's really just a matter of, hey, you got to put the pedal to the metal to win the division, but you're going to be a playoff team. If you're in that comfortable standing at the deadline, I think the Mets will be more aggressive this year at rounding out their roster. And I think right now with David Robertson just lingering out there, that's another opportunity for this Mets team or this Mets front office to be aggressive, knowing that they have a team that right now, by record and the way they've been playing, a team that's been the best in baseball so far. We got our power rankings going up today for justbaseball.com. Actually, once I'm done with this show, I got to write the rest of them. So I got a long night ahead of me, but the Mets are number 1, and I put them at number 2 or 3 at first before I talked it over my editorial team because I was trying to hedge against my bias, but the other editors on our staff agree with the ultimate take that the Mets are the best in baseball right now. I think we have Mets 1, Cubs 2, Dodgers 3, just because the Dodgers haven't been as good the last couple of weeks, and the Cubs have beaten the Dodgers actually 4 times out of 5 during the regular portion of the season, if you don't look back to that Tokyo series. But the bottom line with the Mets is this is a team that looks like a real contender. So you have to stay aggressive on all fronts. Right now, you got to see what you have in Dedniel Nunez. You have to take some of the bubble wrap off and see if he could be a guy for you this year. Because if not, if Nunez isn't the answer, where is the answer inside your organization of the next lights out, high leverage reliever? Are you dipping into Double-A to get a converted starter in Felipe De La Cruz to get a lefty in your bullpen? I don't really think so. But Ryan Lambert is a guy that throws over 100 miles per hour. He was started the year in high A. Do you ever try him out and just see what that octane can do in an MLB bullpen? I don't know, but you have to find some answers at the back end of your bullpen. I don't know if you can wait until the deadline. If Nunez comes up and he's really good again, I think you could take a step back and you can wait on a Brooks Raley. Wait to see what else develops. Wait to see how your starting pitching getting healthy could translate into your bullpen, because you never know. Maybe the Mets at some point have such a loaded rotation that they've converted one of their starting pitchers into the pen. You have Clay Holmes sitting there if you want to. But also, I can't see Tyler McGill getting removed from this rotation with how good he's been pitching. But he would be great out of the bullpen. You just don't know how these things evolve throughout the season. I just think right now, when you are grasping for answers a little bit, you got to go to Nunez sooner than later. I really think that's step one. I would love it if they were even more aggressive and they just brought in David Robertson and then figured everything else out later, because then Nunez becomes depth again. And you have Robertson maybe after a little bit of a ramp up in the minor leagues, ready to join your bullpen and be a real difference maker. I just don't know if I actually envision them pulling the trigger on that signing. That's why Nunez to me is the glass that has to be broken in case of emergency. Emergency has happened. You lost two relievers. You have a guy that is floundering in late inning situations, regardless of what Carlos Mendoza and Ryne Stanek will tell you. It's been bad the last week. Will he turn it around? Potentially, but I don't trust him in late innings right now, and I think the Mets need to find some more arms that they do trust. So we'll see how they address this. Ultimately, it's all going to look like a moot point if the Mets go out and beat the Diamondbacks and win another series and hit the road and start doing the same thing there. But this was a rough loss, and the state of this bullpen, it's in a lot worse shape than it was 10 days ago. That's for sure. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. And after your second watch, head over to the Locked On MLB YouTube channel or the podcast feed and check out Locked On MLB Game Night. This is our show where we break down everything going on in Major League Baseball with analysis from all 30 of our Locked On MLB hosts for each individual team, as well as some of our hosts that are covering every game on the show. So check out Locked On MLB Game Night on the Locked On MLB YouTube channel or the podcast feed.